What's going on, everyone? This is Mitch from RespectMyRegion.com, back with another episode of the North American Weed Tour podcast. We're looking at the best in legal cannabis and beyond. That comes from products to dispensaries to technology, which we're focusing on today. I got special guest Jeremy Johnson from Dispense joining us. How you doing today, Jeremy?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise, man. Likewise. I know we be nerding out. We're fans of some similar aspects of the digital space, so we'll get into that a little bit later. But just glad to have you on here, and then I'm always stoked about your posts. I know I've given you shit on a couple of them where I'm like, man, you got to stop giving out this game. I'm trying to charge people for the stuff you're giving out for free.
Yeah.
Always giving out great game for anyone out there, man. You got to follow this man on LinkedIn. He be giving out value. But before we get into too much value, I want to know every guest I have on here, I start with kind of their origin story with the plant being cannabis. So I'm just kind of curious, whatever you feel vulnerable sharing, whether that's personal, professional, or both. I'm just curious, kind of your start with cannabis.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, I see Aviel in the chat. Shout out him, Gnarly Gray, back in I don't even know, 2014 Portland. That was my spot. That's where I would, every day after my 9-to-5 job, I would post up at Gnarly Gray. So that throws me way back there. But I've been involved with it for, my whole life. I'm second generation, so my parents were involved. And in 2008, when Michigan went medical, I got my caregiver license. And so that I was 18, I got to vote on it in Michigan, got my caregiver license. I did that all throughout college. And then I went out to California, spent like a year and a half there, but then ended up in Portland doing web design and mobile development. Sorry, my dog is in the background there. But doing web design and mobile development, and that's kind of where I got my background on the e-commerce side. And I got to vote in Portland to go recreational there, and eventually made my way home to be involved in the cannabis market here in Michigan as I saw that it was about to go recreational, which we voted for it in 2018. So it's been a long journey, but I feel like I found my spot, with the intersection of technology and cannabis, and happy to be doing it.
That's awesome, man. It's funny, Avial popped in here. You said you know him. I don't know him personally, but I know him through the music scene. Being up here in Seattle, I know he's out there in the Portland area.
Yeah,
and so that's funny. It's such a fucking small world, man.
Yeah, we did. Well, I ran into him. He was just freestyling at an open mic one night, and then we did a couple shows here and there. But connected over cannabis and music as well.
Yeah, and that's obviously we're talking about music before that. I know you got the a lot of hip hop knowledge and the background, man, and that's I think that's why we get along, man. But I'm curious, when did you start with Dispense, and kind of give me the background on the start of Dispense, and kind of what was the purpose of bringing that company to the market?
Yeah, so back in late 2019, I had an opportunity. I was doing the caregiver thing here in Michigan, but we were going recreational, and I had a building that I had bought in downtown Marquette, Michigan, which is where I'm from. And I knew it would qualify for a cannabis license, but Michigan had really strict, financial requirements at the time. You had to have $1 million liquid to start a dispensary, which I did not have. But I was lucky that I was able to partner up with some other people in the area. And so we opened the first recreational dispensary in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And it was at that time that I realized there was an opportunity with the digital side of it, because we needed a website. And I started getting familiar with I hadn't really been doing the web and mobile development for a minute. I was focused on cannabis, but then I started looking at Dutchie, Jane, all the other online platforms out there. And we ended up using Dutchie at the time, but overall I was just really frustrated with the lack of flexibility and like, you know, I've been doing e-commerce for like a decade. And so all these things that I was used to in the mainstream e-commerce world, I couldn't do in cannabis. I didn't have access to my data. I couldn't leverage it the way I wanted. And so I kind of hit a ceiling. And when I hit that ceiling, I was lucky enough to have some friends in Lower Michigan that felt the same way. And I got hired on to help them build out a better e-commerce platform. And unfortunately, long story short, it didn't work out because that company got purchased by Skymint. And so my project got put on the back burner. But through that process, I got introduced to Kyla, the CEO of Dispense, who ran Tableist before that. And she really, you know, we clicked right away. Like she knew that there was room in the e-commerce space in cannabis to grow, but she didn't really know how. And I had all these ideas. And so I'm very grateful that she was like willing to listen to me and help build out, you know, they already had a killer order management platform, but they were doing iframe menus just like everybody else. So, you know, I'm grateful she was willing to listen and help build something better for all of cannabis retailers. But that's kind of how I got involved. And so I've been here for about a year. And when I first joined, most of my focus was on just working with our product and engineering team to build out this better menu platform that sits on top of our order management platform.
Awesome. And, you know, one of the big things like differentiators from the outside looking in of Dispense, right? And I know you guys lean on this, but just that I've noticed is that you guys are building something that arms retailers, but is not a marketplace. A lot of the other people in the market are towing both lines. I run two different businesses, you know, that are in one and have kind of two different things going on. So I'm not knocking that at all, but it's definitely something unique to you guys. So what's I guess the inspiration behind that commitment of like building something that's just only sits as a tool for the retail partners and not also, you know, building a marketplace as well?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, for me, you know, I think there's two kind of inspirations. I mean, personally, like I was the retailer, you know, like I believe in retailers. I like you have to have a face for this. And like when you go, you know, when you put a marketplace in front of your customers, like you lose that personal connection. And so like I felt very strongly about having connections with the retailer and the customer. And so like that's my personal motivation. But I think from a business standpoint, you know, there's just a conflict of interest. You know, we've seen it with companies like Amazon where they use their third party seller data and then they launch products that mimic it. And we've seen it with Uber Eats. We've seen it with Grubhub where, you know, they started off by being partners with or restaurant companies and helping them bring in new orders. But then eventually, because they had that customer data and they had that transaction data, they took it and they were like, okay, these are the areas that are where people are doing a bunch of food takeout. Let's just open a ghost restaurant and serve our food directly to people so we can have higher margins. And so from a business standpoint, that's what always scared me about these e-commerce platforms that were also marketplaces. It's like they're getting all that data. What's stopping them from going and opening a ghost dispensary and selling weed directly to people, or even, you know, selling your customer data to the dispensary down the street? And you know, we kind of saw that happen with Ease already. Ease started off as a marketplace where, you know, they were partnering with dispensaries, but then they went and bought a bunch of licenses. You know, they bought that Green Dragon license and now they own the whole supply chain because they get higher margins on it. So from a business standpoint, I just don't like that conflict of interest. But from a personal standpoint, I really believe in that relationship between the retailer and the customer.
And what do you think, as someone who's ran a dispensary, like when you look at an e-commerce platform, what are some of those main things, like even taking the dispense hat off and just putting on like, this is Jeremy, I'm running a dispensary. What are the things that are most important to you in your mind when it comes to, you know, adding the e-commerce platform?
I think your technology's got to be on point. Number one, right? Like you got to have up to date technology, and that's something that bothers me about the iframe situation. Like iframes were invented in 1996. They're not ideal for e-commerce. They're not ideal for many things. So like number one, you have to have up-to-date technology that works well for your customer, but also works in a way where like you get full insight into your data and you can leverage it. And like Google has a really hard time tracking iframes because it's just JavaScript that reloads. So when you're looking at e-commerce data and you're trying to get like abandoned cart rates, like it just, I found usually that when I was on those iframe menu platforms and I had it hooked up to Google Analytics, I would say only about a third of my transactions were going through.
Hmm.
So like number one, technology, but then number two, like what are your goals? I mean, we've both been in technology for a long time, and we see what happens on the behind the scenes with some of these companies, whether they're selling data or leveraging it. So like I really pay attention to like how do these technology companies make their money, who are their investors, and what's the end goal there.
Yeah, and that's important to look at because, like you said, there have been, there are some companies that are able to toe both lines and deliver on it, but we have seen some examples in the past of, like you said, Amazon, with their third party, what they've done with the third party sellers is it's crazy, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy. They put a lot of small businesses out of business doing that. Um, and that being said, right, like Dispense is in this realm of the e-commerce platform where there is the big two who are, very well financially backed. And you guys are more like, if you liken it to the music realm, a little bit more like on the independent side, right? Like build in like a little bit more. I mean, you guys still got a good team and a great product, right? I'm not trying to devalue that, but
Yeah.
there's obviously the big two out there who catches the headlines, who has a lot of the financial backing. What are some of those ways that you look to stay competitive in the market? Because I think this is game for even the brands out there, the stores that have to compete against MSOs. That dynamic isn't just exclusive to you in technology, right? There is a lot of people out there that might not have the same financial backing or the same size of team, but can still be competitive in the market. And I see you guys out there competing and really leading with value. So I'm curious, what are some of those ways that you guys remain competitive, even though you're not, you're not in the same classification, financially backed as some of these other ones?
Yeah, well, I'll brag a little bit for a second here. Number one, our leadership, Kyla, our CEO, Tim, our CTO. This is not their first time. Like if you want some entertainment, if you want to go down a rabbit hole, look up Table-List, which was a big entertainment company that was doing like they're doing software to power like bottle service and stuff on mostly on the East Coast, but they built a really great company in Table-List and went through some crazy experiences. To bring it back to music, Google Table-List, Google the news results, and you'll find some interesting podcasts there. But their leadership, I think, helps set it apart. And then number two, it's like the partnerships, right? So Dispense is backed by NextView Ventures and Poseidon Asset Management, which are two amazing investment companies that I truly appreciate having on our team, and give so much. They give so much value to us between just connections and just like general business knowledge. So that's a really great aspect. But also on the partnership side, our platform was built for Ascend Wellness. So we were built with enterprise in mind. So like when we're talking about competing with some of these larger companies, that's literally what we were built for. And we've been powering Ascend's e-commerce and in-store experience for since like early 2020. So like we are smaller, where there's only about a dozen of us at Dispense, but we power these large retail locations that do crazy volume, and so we have that backbone, and that's what we were built for. And that's how I think we stay competitive, is like we're all about efficiency. And if you ever walk into an Ascend store, go to Ascend in Collinsville, Illinois, where they're doing 1,500 transactions a day, or go to the Montclair or Rochelle Park in New Jersey. They got 15 kiosks where people are putting orders through. It's absolutely insane, the efficiency that these guys are doing. And you see it if you pay attention to like the quarterly reports, like you hear Ascend's team talk about that efficiency and how it gives them a leg up amongst the other MSOs and their competitors as well.
Yeah, I shopped at the last year when I was in Boston for Boston Cannabis Week. I went to the Send in downtown. I'm
Yeah.
pretty unfamiliar with the area, but the one
Yeah.
downtown, and that was the vibe I got. It was high traffic. You went in and they had the kiosk there to order, which was a kind of, I mean, there's been kiosks before in stores I've shopped at, but it was definitely unique to that in terms of that experience of kind of like placing your order on that and then going into the showroom, and it was definitely like, yeah, efficient, and I could see especially see the value in where they're at. I went at a lower traffic time and it was still pretty booming in there, but I could see
Yeah.
at a high traffic 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I could see like that place is probably moving, man.
The first time I went to that Boston store, it was like 8:30, 9 in the morning, and there was already a line outside. People just waiting to get in. And it was funny because we were there for business. And so like there's this line of people and like we just get let in and everybody's like, man, what? I'm like, I'm working, I'm not buying anything. Don't worry. Go get your weed.
I'm here to make sure you guys get your weed quicker, man.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I know, we've obviously had some rapport on LinkedIn, and we've had some, we've had the FaceTime digitally at this point a couple times, but really one of the things that attracted me to yourself early on was the emphasis of product and strain driven SEO, which I'm a big believer in myself. And there's not a lot of people talking about it. It's something that I feel like I often talk about, like, yo, there's so much value out there, like prime for the taking. And I don't know, not a ton of people talk about it. There's not a lot of things out there. You're one of the few that like really talks about it, shows data behind it, and obviously empowers what you guys do. So I'm just kind of curious, through Dispense's platform, like what is the value propositions or the value points around these product and strain specific SEO, and how do you guys help power that?
Yeah, well, I want to give like a quick statistic because I see this a lot. Like a lot of people like say like, "Oh, it's not worth it. The search volume isn't there." But like I've got it pulled up right in front of me right now. Like wedding cake gets 90,000 searches every single month, and if you look at a brand like a Jeter or a Wana or a Kiva that have like household recognition, at least in the cannabis industry, those brands are getting tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands searches every month as well. So that's like the value, right? Is you want to be at the top for those searches. But I'm gonna have to ask you to repeat that question because now I'm just thinking about search volumes.
No, what is the way that Dispense adds value or
Yeah,
builds
yeah.
around that? Yeah.
Okay, so like the thing, kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation, the thing that like one of the things that frustrated me with the iframes is that you don't get individual product pages. And because an iframe is just JavaScript that reloads, Google isn't indexing that content. And actually any content that Google is indexing, they're just giving credit to the host of that content. So if you got an iframe menu from Weed Maps or Leafly, Weed Maps or Leafly gets that credit on Google for that content. And so what we do at Dispense is we host your menu, but we put it on your website. So we call it like native content. It's a part of your website and it lives on your website, and Google can crawl it. And Google can crawl each one of those individual product pages. So Google knows that you carry that product page. And then, we take it a couple steps further with number one, we kind of let you set your SEO strategy. So you can put, you can set your page titles, you can set your meta descriptions, and you can do that dynamically with different macros. And then number two, we automatically set your structured data to tell Google what it's looking at. So, if they're looking at a product page, we're telling Google, here's the product name, here's the product brand, here's the location of the store, here's the image, and here's even the review, the pricing, and the quantity. So like when you Google a product, if you want some Edie Parker pre-rolls in Boston and you Google Edie Parker pre-rolls, one of the first results you're going to see is for that downtown Boston store, that Ascend store. And it's going to be a photo with the Edie Parker pre-roll right on it. And it's going to look like a result that you want to click on. So that's the value, is we make it indexable, but then we also make it look pretty.
Mm. Absolutely. And through that automation, it's huge, right? Like, I've been doing product and strain specific SEO from a different perspective. I mean, I do it for clients, right? But like I do it on a media platform, right? And I've been doing that since, I don't know, 2016 or something like that. And I was committed to it early, even when it was like, when Washington, we're the second state to go rec. So like these, sure, strains might have had some volume, but like product specific or brand, there was no MSO at that point, right? There's two states that had legal weed, and we were getting low. So we were excited about 90 search results a month. We knew this will grow. This will soon be 900, and even if it never gets to 9,000, if we're showing the top result for hundreds of pieces of content at 900, our traffic's going to exponentially grow. And it's not just putting that content out and getting those visitors at that point. It's it's like an actual asset. I always try and tell people, like, online content is a fucking asset that you can carry with for time. And even if you're like, hey, my dispensary folded, you're still getting traffic. You can then fucking sell that traffic elsewhere or affiliate it. It's an asset that you can still further monetize.
I mean, look at Leafly and Weed Maps. I mean, Leafly, I think, is the prime example of strain related traffic. And if you listen to Sai, one of the founders of Leafly, he's CEO of Headset now. I was actually just listening to him and Emily from Poseidon have a podcast together, the High Rise podcast, and I was just listening to one of their episodes from July of this year, and Sai talks about how their whole strategy with Leafly was to rank on Google for strains, because Weedmaps was doing it for products, but nobody was doing it for strains. And that's how they built their business and how they got to the point where they were getting literally millions of visitors every month just from strain related traffic.
And they're still to this day. I mean, honestly, my personal opinions on Leafly, they've had a hard time figuring out the right business model for the tens of millions of dollars that they spent on that content. But regardless, that content, like you said, is still an asset. They built that out early in the 2000s. And again, when I was doing that content originally, they were, it was them and maybe Seed Finder. When you searched a strain or whatever, or even a product, there was not much. Weed maps started getting more prevalent. Now some of these menu companies I'm battling with them for ranks of some of these products, or even some of the clients that we create products for. But I think the value in that of strain, and even like brand / strain specific, right? Because like you said, wedding cake is a popular strain, but you go to certain markets, like I got one right here in Washington. Like if you go to certain dispensaries, this particular wedding cake, people will be like, oh, that's the one. And there's not a lot of competition to rank for Spin Garden's wedding cake. There's not a lot of, and the person that's going to search that is their search intent is most likely to purchase said product, and their Spin only exists in Washington. So that person is in this state looking for that product. There's a very high likelihood they're in your market and they're looking to make a purchase with that search.
Yeah, 100%. And like I see it every day with search queries. Like I can go in and I can look up wedding cake, searches, but then you see the related searches and you see the volume is around, like, it's like wedding cake ozone, or it's wedding cake Curaleaf. Curaleaf gets a quality whatever, but they still get a ton of searches online. So like it's people searching for that specific product and that specific strain, because somebody probably passed them a joint one day and they were like, damn, this is fire. What is it? And somebody was like, yeah, I don't know, check out the jar. And then they went and Googled it.
And that's, you throw another real world example, like out here on the West Coast. I mean, they're in a couple states, but California, the behemoth, but Steezy, right? Like they are huge. And honestly, I'll use them and Cookies. Both of them have not done a great job creating on-site traffic for both of their brand pages. Where if you're a media site like myself, where you just want cannabis consumers to come to your platform, or you're a dispensary, those are huge brands that have spent millions of dollars on market share, and they have not spent the same money building out content to capture the fruits of that market share. So as a dispensary, you're primed to just pick up the fruit right off the ground. Like, you don't even have to get the ladder and get out the tree. You pick it off the fucking ground, man.
We've got a if you look at Cookies like website, I mean, you'll see they're just not really doing it the way they should be doing it. But like we've got a client in Massachusetts who's got, they carry cookie products, and they're vertically integrated. So I think I don't know, but I think they actually like, they have the license to make them too. Like they grow those strains, they process it, they sell it, but they get a ton of traffic from people searching for Cookies brands because they're optimized. So it doesn't even go to Cookies, it goes to this dispensary because they're actually doing it right and they're getting the fruits of that labor.
Yeah, we realized that early on when Cookies again was still only in like 1 or 2 states. Every fucking time they opened up a new store and launched in a new state, we made an article optimized around Cookies Oregon, Cookies Massachusetts, whatever. And I was like, bro, we're just pulling top search results. Is the only thing underneath it is PR Newswire link. That was the only thing, and we were fucking outranking that every fucking time, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I see with some of our clients, like I see them outrank the actual brand's websites. Like I got a client in California that outranks Jeter.com for Jeter pre-rolls.
I remember.
And
I think you shared. Did you share that on LinkedIn?
I think so because I remember one of the dudes who does SEO for Jeter was like, "We won't allow this to happen," and I was like, "Well, I'm doing it."
I think I saw. I think I saw that exchange, and it's
Yeah,
and that's the power, right? Like obviously at the end of the day, like people are searching dispensary or cannabis dispensary or weed dispensary or pot shop, depending on where you're at regionally, right? Like regionally and culturally, certain words have volume, but like at the end of the day, I run a lean organization. Like, we're talking about Leafly earlier, and they're in my backyard. Like, I was not funded 20 or $30 million, but I'm competing for the same traffic that they're competing for. I
yeah,
realized early on I couldn't beat Leafly at Blue Dream or Gorilla Glue. They ranked at the top the top result, and it would have cost me way too much time and money to try and take that from them where I could just build out on. I realized early like Cookies had a lot of hype and people weren't building Cookies wasn't even building content, let alone other people weren't building it. And like when early in gelato, early in runts, just being a consumer in the streets, I found, oh, this strain's going to be hot. And so we could beat these behemoths off of, all right, these don't have the search results now, but again, back to the start of the conversation, building out those assets, and they fucking, they pay dividends over time, man.
yeah. It's funny too because like it pays to be early in any game, but like especially in weed because you see, as consumers we see what the hot strains are early on, and if you make sure, as a dispensary, if you make sure you get those products in store and your menu, like your online menu is optimized for that, like you're going to be ahead of the game because
Mm-hmm.
Leafly's not Leafly, it's a large company, they're probably not on top of it as much as they were early on, and you can get that traffic. So if you can, with how many new strains pop up every day, if you can stay early, you'll reap the rewards from it 100%.
Yeah, no knocking Leafly. All due
Yeah,
respect for them, they're a great resource, but they're not in the streets, man. They're not in the streets, and it's
yeah,
not even like being in the streets like the stereotypical streets, but any dispensary,
yeah,
what's hot in that specific area, that state or that city or that pocket, that neighborhood, that pocket of the city, people know, right? Like people come into your store and ask for products specifically or ask for strains specifically. From my perspective, that's what you need to build content out on. That's what you need to double down on. Like whether you
yeah,
look at your Google My Business, your Google Analytics, or just your customer feedback, you're getting keywords to rank for. Like they're out there. It's easy. Just double
yeah.
down on what's already working.
And you can, if you put every product you have on your online menu, you'll see which ones get traffic, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can double down on those strains that people are searching for. So it's like the answers are just being given to you if you're doing it right.
Right. And that's to your point, and the value proposition of having a service like your guys of getting that data also can impact not just online, because I think people think, oh, it's just traffic, but no, like you're saying, that impacts your purchasing, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if we are just getting consistent traffic for these brands or these strains, like obviously you're not going to have a whole shelf of 19 different wedding cakes, but you should have a healthy supply of wedding cake at maybe each price point, right?
Yeah. You know what though? I would love to see like just a full wall display of all the different wedding cake variants. or like OG cushes, you know, just like one display, nothing but different OG cushes.
That, you know, that would be unique, and I'm all for that as a consumer, right? Like there's room. I personally, I guess, a little bit of a tangent. I don't think enough dispensaries are ballsy enough to like,
Yeah.
yo, we're just gonna like really position on being the go-to spot for this. I think too many people try to be everything for everyone, which works some cases. A lot of people get lost in the sauce, and then, you know, they're constantly trying to shift based on competition. Not enough people just, you know, have the nuts to just be like, I'm gonna double down like that. Like, we're gonna be the OG Kush store. Like, we're not gonna be everything for everyone, but if you want OG Kush, we will be the spot that someone will
Yeah.
recommend or you will go to.
Yeah. I would probably shop there if somebody did
Me,
that.
yeah, me too, man. I'd why put me on some fire that I don't know.
Yeah.
So we were talking about a little bit beforehand. I don't know if you care to share it on here. People can go on your LinkedIn, but you obviously you shared the case study with Ascend, centered around what we were talking about, the value around product and strain specific SEO. So I'm curious. You mean you could share it on here? I think if you want. I'm not quite sure how that works from the guest perspective, to be completely transparent. Or you could just give me, you know, you can just talk us through it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So we for context here, so you know, we launched this updated menu product of ours at the beginning of the year, and we just, you know, it took a couple months to start getting data in, but now we've got the data. You know, our first client, obviously, you know, Ascend is who we've been working with for the longest, and so they were the first to pilot this new menu solution that we have, and now we've got the data behind it. And so, you know, I think I know how to do this. I'm going to try. We'll see if it works. And I won't like go through the whole thing because, you know, I can't share my screen on here actually. But if you go to dispensapp.com, you know, you'll see it right on the homepage. You can click on the case study. But like one of my favorite examples to point to is Ascend. They have an in-house brand, right? Like, so Ascend is vertically integrated in all the states they operate in. So they got the grow, they got the process, they got the retail, and their in-house brand is Ozone. That's what it's called. So like before, when they just had the iframe menu, they were getting no traffic for strains, categories, or brands, right? But as soon as we launched that, in the first 100 days, we did $210,000 worth of revenue for them for their in-house brand Ozone. So they had zero traffic beforehand,
Wow.
and then all of a sudden, you know, like, and this is like, I'm just going to quote the numbers here. Like in the first 100 days, 475,000 impressions, 3.8% click-through rate. So that's fairly low. Like that can continue to go up. And out of all those people that clicked on that Google search, that resulted in 2,100 transactions for a total of $210,000 in revenue. And once you get onto that site, the actual conversion rate once they got onto the menu was 6.2%, which for anybody that's been doing e-commerce for a while, you know that 6% is kind of the high end for an e-commerce conversion rate. I mean, I've seen it higher for sure. Like actually on edibles, we're doing like an 8% conversion rate right now, but 6 is really good. I think typically in e-commerce you see around like 3 to 5%. And on that note, if anybody ever tells you their menu does a 20% conversion rate, that's not accurate because they're only measuring the conversion rate of their menu, not of the greater website. So don't let people. If you hear somebody say, "Oh, we do 20% conversion rate," that's just like I would be blown away if anybody's actually doing that on their greater website.
Yes, it's not the full story for sure. I ran some ecom. We started as an apparel ecom business originally, and fuck, if I'd had 20% conversion rate, damn man, I'd have been crushing it. I'd probably
Yeah,
still be selling clothes.
if 1/5 of everybody who visited your website was buying something, we wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah. I would have done sold out to Zoomies or something already, man. But
Yeah.
I think that's the unique thing, right? And that importance. And like you're talking about like showcasing that, right? $200,000 in revenue, and that's over 100 days. Like that it could maintain that pace. It could dip a little bit. I doubt it's, you know, it's not going to go away. But as that brand continually gets bigger, as those pages stay ranked and continually climb in rank, claim more positions, claim more search volume, that number is going to grow, right? And they're not that company doesn't have to do anything for that,
Yeah,
right? Like there's no
it's recurring. It's like residual income almost at a certain point. Like you built the brand, you built that brand. People want that product. You've built your funnel. You're getting those search results, and then it's just going up. I mean, if you look at that case study again, dispensapp.com, like the first month we launched it from May to June was a 7.5% increase in overall revenue. The next month, 8.3%. And this is online revenue. And I'm guessing at the end of August, we'll see another somewhere between 7 to 9% increase
Mhm.
from that organic revenue. So that it's just SEO. It's like the longer you're doing it, the more it pays off.
And that's still just the trackable results. And I think sometimes people don't take into account, like, some Google searches are for, like we said, some of them, the intent is, hey, I want to search something that I'm going to buy right now. Sometimes it is a different part of the funnel where it's like, I'm just going to consider. And there's also that ability of that I believe is valuable, right? Like if I search something and someone shows me it, consciously, subconsciously, I might think of that person in the future. That thing that I wanted, that information I saw, this person was the medium. I mean, I've put a lot of my eggs in the basket of being a medium, right? To just be the conduit or the platform that puts people onto something. And I'm not even necessarily selling something with my platform, but I've put so much belief in that aspect. I've dedicated a lot of my life to it. So I think even beyond just the online conversions, I don't think I don't think it should be overlooked that there is a value of someone walks in the store and then they're purchasing a product because they've Google searched it before. And even if you were asked them in the store, we talk about this all the time, the power of SEO. Someone comes into a store, how'd you hear about us? Like, oh, I just saw the store and came in. Well, but you might have seen the name and the logo online 19 different times. So when you saw the store, you automatically knew it was a dispensary, and you're subconsciously like, oh, or consciously, I just came in here because I saw the store, but that's not the full
It's top
story.
of mind. It's
Right.
top of mind. They've seen it before. I'm like the worst example because I preach e-commerce, but I am the dude that will search it and then go buy it in the store.
Yeah.
Like I'm like I'll Google it first, be like, okay, they got it, and then I won't even order online. I'll just go to the store and pick it up. So
Yeah.
I'm not even being tracked in those that ROI there, but it's still there.
Absolutely. And that's, like I live in Washington, we don't have delivery. I've never, even though I don't necessarily have to shop for cannabis like your average consumer that consumes as much as me, I still probably spend more at dispensaries than the majority of, I mean, I'm probably in the top, single digit percentage of how much money I spend at dispensaries. And I've never, and I'm not ignorant enough to know that I'm not everyone is like myself, but I've never pre-ordered. But I've definitely looked at menus, done search results for specific brands and products, seen where it's available, and gone to said store.
Yeah, I actually don't think I've ever pre-ordered either.
Yeah,
I
I don't.
should.
I did some, I did order like some trap deliveries in California a couple times, when it wasn't quite legal and I was visiting, I did some of that, but that was
Yeah.
about, I think that's about my only actual online order. But I obviously, you know, you're, I'm in the business of the internet, so are you. So although, it's funny to say, I like that because it's like not, I believe in this. I don't believe in it because I ignorantly, oh, that's me and everybody's like me, right? We're both acknowledging that's not even like us, and that's still
Yeah.
the value that not only we preach to other people, but obviously have invested a lot of our time into building.
You know what though? I mean, I don't do it for weed, but like I did just like my girlfriend pre-ordered a Target, like she ordered a bunch of stuff from Target
Sure.
online, and then I went and picked it up at the end of my day before we did this webinar. So like I do it in other aspects of my
True.
life, but with cannabis, I just like that in-person experience, so I don't do it there. I'm not really trying to spend 30 minutes at Target though.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a fair point. When I do go into a dispensary, I always apologize. Like I'm about to annoy you. I'm about to ask a lot of questions, and
Yeah.
if I ask for something and it's not it, you don't gotta hate on it, but just tell me you don't want that, man, and put something in front of me that I want.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on here, especially at the end of the day, Jeremy. Like I said, this is stuff I could continually nerd out, but it's beyond having you on here and just hyping up what you're doing. Like again, I personally am a fan of it, and I also have personally dedicated a lot of the last almost decade to a very similar train of thought. So that's why I think why I connect so well with a lot of the stuff you put out there. Again, for anyone out there, if you're on LinkedIn, you don't know Jeremy, I'm gonna shamelessly plug him. Go follow him. Dispense is a great platform and you should check that out. But also, he's just putting out a lot of game, whether you choose to rock with it, Dispense or not. You're going to learn something from following this man if you are in the cannabis space. He's given out a lot of gems that I wouldn't even give out. So definitely tap in with him for people that are interested. He said dispensapp.com. The case study just dropped. You can find out more information. Anything else you want to plug before I get you up out of here, man?
No, I mean, thank you to you for having me on. I appreciate what you're doing too. Obviously, I've been following you as well for a while, and I've seen what you've done in your space and for your area of the country, whether it's cannabis or music. So I appreciate it, and thank you.
Hell yeah. Thank you. This is the North American Weed Tour podcast. We're looking at the best in legal cannabis across the country. We'll be back next week with more shows, more content, and we'll be on the road. I'll be in Arizona for part of next week. And then we got Massachusetts, some other states. So stay tuned.
Michigan.
Hey, I'm working on it. I'm working. It's not on the plan yet, but I'm working on it. I'm not lying to you. I got it's triple circled now. It was no longer double circled. I just got to fit it in the schedule.
If you want a quick history lesson on Michigan, and you go to dispensapp.com again and go to the updates section, the subdomain updates.dispensapp.com. The newest release, all the releases are named after strains. The newest release is Garden Green, a strain that's only grown in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and there's a little blurb about it and some of the history behind it, which also fun fact, if you Google Garden Peninsula, the first result is a news article from like 1997 from the Seattle Times.
Oh, wow.
So Google the Garden Peninsula, Google Garden Green. There's not a ton of information out there, but it's like one of the old school weed strains that used to be grown in the Midwest and grown on a massive scale. If you smoked weed in the Midwest, it probably came from Michigan.
That's wild. Okay. I didn't know. He's putting on some history for the cannabis. This is the North American Weed Tour podcast. We'll be tapping in with everybody next week. Thanks for